This Tailwind crash course is going to be a very practical one. Instead of going through each value of Tailwind through the documentation and through showing you it in code, we'll be building a site like this. Apart from that, I'll be also showing you how to tame your site so that you can change around the colors, and only changing it one place will result in something like this. Or like this. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. So to get this started, first of all, we'll be going to the Tailwind documentation. Here, the tailwindcss.com/docs/installation. Here you'll be finding an installation for Node, which, if you're familiar with Node.js and npm, I advise you install it this way, because this is made for production. And the way we are going to do it is the easy way, which they don't advise for you to deploy your site like this. This is just for development purposes, but it's quite easy to set up. This is the place CDN tab. And to get this started, first just create your basic HTML syntax. And here you can see that there is a script right on here. This script for the place CDN is what you need to put in your head tag. That's not enough yet. Coming down, there is also another script that it suggests you should add, which is this tailwind.config, which we will do in another way, because for this video, we'll be using this extension. Go to the extensions tab and install it for yourself. This is the official Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, which will help you out with searching through Tailwind classes, so you don't have to look at the documentation at all times. It will just pop you up the predefined classes in Tailwind. And after you've installed this, we'll be coming to our files, create a new file, which will be called tailwind.config.js. Now in this tailwind.config.js, copy this part of the script, which is the tailwind.config, and then all the brackets. This is a basic object, but instead of saying tailwind.config, we will use the Node version one, which is module.exports, because only this way will the IntelliSense actually work and actually recognize that we're using Tailwind. And after this, we just come here to the head tag, and after the place CDN script, we are simply going to attach another script with the tailwind.config.js file. Now after this is done, just wait a little, type in class, and then the IntelliSense should be working. For example, BG stands for background, and you can see that since Tailwind is a library of classes, it has some predefined classes for background colors as well. I will open up the index.html with the live server extension, and after this, we'll just simply get right onto styling. So as I said, BG stands for background, and I want a gray background here for the body. So BG gray 100, and the text stands for the actual color attribute in CSS, which is the text color, and I will say text gray 900. So we set the basic color and the background color. If I save, you will see it. It darkened a little bit. And then we'll go component by component, and the first one that I'd like to create will be the navbar. So the basic navbar is going to be a nav element. It will have a class bg blue 600. There are margin and padding in Tailwind as well. M stands for margin, M dash, and you can set whatever you want. Or MB will stand for margin bottom, MT will stand for margin top, and same with the P, and then you set what value you'd like to put it, then P, and we'll be using P4 in this example, so padding, or in Tailwind, if you hover over it, it will say that its padding will be actually 1 rem units. So if you hover over any classes, you will, or Tailwind classes, you will see what the actual CSS classes are. Now inside the actual navbar, or the nav element, we'll be creating a div. If we have the class text white, so this will, if you hover over it, simply say color RGB, and that color, this is basically white. The text, you can actually set the font size by saying 2XL or any XL. There are multiple values for this. You can see the font size is 1.5 rem, and it sets also a line height. And you can also set, for example, a bold font, which is font bold. If you hover over this class, it will say font weight 700. And this is going to be our logo. So write my website in here. After that, create another div. This will hold our actual nav elements. and they will have the class hidden by default because it's mobile first. So there is something after we write these classes I want to show you. So it's basically going to be hidden by default. Its MD is going to be flex, and MD, I mean on a medium-sized device. It will use flexbox, so display flex. You can see this is a media query, and it's going to have an attribute called spacex4, which basically it's a whole lot of calculations. It's just going to make sure that there is a little bit of gap between each of the elements. And now that we've written the classes, you might be confused about what MD and all this stuff actually is. Why are we hiding the nav elements? So if you come to the Tailwind documentation and search for responsive design, you can see that there are some basic values. Width of 16 by default here in the image class v16. That's because by default there are 5 breakpoints, and the small is going to have a min width of 640 pixels. So the way you build with Tailwind is you build for this absolute smallest device first, then you can say which breakpoint should apply which classes. So you say SM, and then the class that you'd like. Then you say MD, and again the classes that you'd like, then LG, XL, and you go up. So it's never that you build for a desktop at first, you always build with Tailwind for a mobile at first, and then define different classes for different designs. So if that's clear, we'll be working just like that. Everything will be built for a mobile first, and then for an actual normal device. Now inside this div we'll be creating 4 A elements, and for each of them we'll be writing the classes, so the text will be white. As I said, there is SM, MD, and all these breakpoints that you can access by putting a column and then the classes. So you can actually do that with the events as well. So for example, hover event, you say hover, and then what classes would you like to apply when they are hovered over? Well, I'd like to apply background blue 700. So there is a little bit of transition in its background whenever it's hovered over, and we are actually going to give them a P2 so that it's not, so that there is a little rectangle when you change the background color. And there is also for the border radius something called rounded, and you can choose rounded SM, rounded MD, LG, XL, 2XL, but we'll simply be using the rounded for some border radius changes. And as you can already see, it's already working, the hover effects. There is the little, because of the padding, there is spacing between, not just between, but the actual background is there. So Tailwind is doing a great job at this. And after this is done, let's create another div. This one is going to be the, well, hamburger menu for our responsive design. Its class will be MD, so on a medium-sized device and above, its class will be hidden, and it will have a text white. Then inside it, create a button, and this button is going to have an ID menu button, and it's for its class only one thing will be there, which will be a focus class. So sorry, not a focus, but you see the focus event in Tailwind, and then we'll say outline none. This is very simple, it's just the outline. And then there is an SVG in here that I will simply just copy over. This is an SVG that will make this little hamburger menu look cool. And the only class applied to this, the Tailwind classes, are some height and width settings, which are basically H6 and V6. You can see that they are just some RAM settings. It's very simple. But now the layout of these elements are not too good, right? So what we'll be doing instead is actually wrapping all these in a div. So inside the nav element, create a div, which they will be wrapped in. We'll be applying some classes to this. There is a class called container. And if you hover over this container class, it has some basic media query settings, which will have the width is basically 100%, but after it gets certain values, there will be some max width set, and it will just make it so that it's an actual container and that it shrinks properly. So this is a very useful predefined class. There is also mx auto, which on the x-axis, its margin will be auto. So margin left auto and margin right auto. Then there is the flex class, which will simply say display flex. The justify between, so this is the justify content between. You could also say justify center or all the other flexbox classes. And as for the align items, instead of saying align items, you actually say items. and you can see start, and we'll be using the center one. So you can access all the classes which you would in CSS. That's why it's very important to know CSS before actually learning Tailwind, because otherwise you will simply be lost. And as you can see, our layout completely changed. There is the SVG if I open the developer tools. I don't know if you can see it. It's this little hamburger menu, coolly styled hamburger menu. We're not done with this yet, because we still need the mobile menu, because this is basically just the desktop menu. So we'll be creating another div, and this will have an ID, mobile menu. As for its classes, it's going to be MD hidden. So at a medium-sized device and above, it's going to be hidden. Its background will be blue 600. It will also be just being given the hidden class by default. Tailwind will scribble this with yellow in a minute. It's hidden, but we are giving it the flex class as well. The reason we are giving it a flex class is because it will be a flex direction column to center the actual elements, the drop-down elements that it will contain. So flex call, and items will be centered, and justify centered will be given as well. And now we can come inside it and create the actual elements. So there will be again 4 A elements. Actually, I believe you can also omit the hidden class from here, because the MD hidden is going to overwrite it anyways. If you don't want to, or it's bothering you that it's scribbled with yellow, you can omit it. And as for its class, it's going to have a display block given unless it's hidden. Its text is going to be white. Whenever you hover over it, it's going to have the same transition as the others would. So basically BG blue 700. And then it's also going to have a P2. This is the same as it did in the above navbar element. I just shut it off. So this will make the background transition. And basically we are done with our navbar, but it's not functional yet. And don't get scared, we'll be writing a little bit of JavaScript in here, but it's going to be very simple. So after the end of your body, so not after the end, before the end of your body, write a script in here. And what we'll be doing here is document.getElementById menu button. Remember, we gave an ID for the menu. .add event listener, so we're adding an event listener for it, which will listen to the click event. So whenever it's clicked, then simply put a comma in here and then pass in an arrow function, which will say document.getElementById. And we're looking here for the mobile menu. So remember, this is the ID that we gave for the actual whole mobile menu. And we are accessing the class list. So .classlist.toggle. So we are toggling the class and give the class that you'd like to toggle hidden. So this will turn on and off the actual class, and we are basically done, I believe. So if I press the F12 here, you can see that if I keep clicking the toggle button, then it will toggle in the hidden class and toggle it off. It's perfect, it's working. Now moving on, I'd like to create the hero section. So we'll be creating a new section, just like this. It will have a class. Its background will be the BG blue 500. And don't worry about the fact that these are just row typed in values and not the tamed ones, because we'll be having a look at that at the end of the video. Its text will be white, and we give it a padding 10, which actually stands for how much RAM units? 2.5 RAM units padding. As you can see, it's also commented there that it's 40 pixels. Inside that, create another div. This one will be having the class container as it did before, so it's basically just simple container. It will be centered with the MX auto. We use flexbox, its flex direction will be a column. On a medium device though, it will be a row, so flex row. Its items will be centered, and that's about it. Now inside that we'll be creating another div. This will hold the content of the website. So for example, welcome to my website with the h1 and etc, etc. Its class will be on a medium v as for width dash 1/2. So it will be 50% width. If you hover over it, it will say width 50%. So you can also do it by these fractional values. You can invent your own fractional values if you want to. It will be text center, which will simply say text align centered. And on a medium device though, it will be text left. So if you're viewing on a desktop, it will be 50% and text left. If you're viewing on a mobile, it will be text center. And let's create the actual text inside it. So the age one, it will have the class text 4xl. So this is the text size. But on the medium device though, it will be text 5xl, which is a bigger text. It will be font bold, and it will have a margin button. M would be margin, and then MB is margin bottom, and it will be 4. And let's just type in something here. So welcome to my website. Then also create a P here. It will have the class text LG, which is the large text, but on a medium device. So if you're viewing on a desktop, then text XL, and then it will have a margin bottom of 6. So these are, after a while, just really simple. You just have to practice Tailwind a little bit, and you will get familiar with these classes. Obviously, we could go into more detail on some of the niche classes, but you can always just look up documentation, because it's impossible to go over all the Tailwind classes in one go. There we go. We provide the best services for you. And then a call to action link, which will say learn more. You have a class BG white. Its text will be blue. So text blue 500. It will be pixel 4 pixel. It will be the padding on the x-axis 4, and then the padding on the y-axis will be 2, and it will be also rounded, so it's just a simple rounded. And whenever you hover over it, so the hover effect, PG gray 200. We are almost done. We still need the image though, so we'll be creating another div here. It will yet again, if you're watching on a full device, it will be medium v1/2, so it's a 50% width. On the margin top, it will be 6, and but if you're watching on the desktop, then the margin top will be 0. And inside this is going to be very simple. We just put in here an image. Its source will be this hero.png. Come over here, hero.png, and its class will be rounded. So for a little bit of border radius, rounded LG, and it will have a little bit of shadow. And you do that simply by saying shadow LG, or whatever value you'd like. It just basically gives a shadow, and you can see it's a whole lot of a mess. That's because it's for multiple browsers. Now we'll create the cards section. So yet again, another section. Its class will be the container, mxauto10, mxauto, and then p10. So these are basically all the values we're using here. I don't have to explain it 1,000 times. And then we'll create a div. We'll have the class flex. Will yet again to the display flex. Flex call will set it to be a column whenever it's on a mobile view. However, on a full view it will be flex row, and also on a full view it will be space x6, which will make them aligned properly. You could also say gap in here instead of space x6, but space x6 is just a cleaner way of saying this. This is because as you can see, it calculates a whole lot of things with the margin and all that calculated in. And after that wrapper is done, we'll actually create the card. So it will have a background white. It will have a padding 6. It will be a little bit rounded for that border radius. Also with the shadow large. This is the same as the image had. Whenever you hover over it, the shadow will grow to shadow XL. Also put a transition shadow, so that there is a little bit of, the transition that you'd put on normal CSS effects. It will have a margin bottom 6. However, on a full view, it won't have a margin bottom. So margin bottom 0. This is getting to be a long class. And it will be flex-1, which if you hover over it, this is a 1-to-1 ratio. So this is an aspect ratio type. And now inside the actual card element, we can start creating the h2. It will have a class text 2xl, font bold, and then MB4, very, very simple. And as for the A and P elements, I will simply copy them over at this point, because they are just text gray, some margin bottom, text blue, and some hover effect for the actual breed more elements and all that stuff. So we have one card, and we'll copy this card over. We'll copy it over a few more times. Retitle and card 2 right there. You can already see it's still a medium view. That's because when I was recording, I wanted to put it this way so that it makes a little bit of sense instead of making it to the mobile view. but we can test the mobile view actually. So if I just shrink it, for example, 375 pixels, then you can see this is the mobile view. And we're done with the card section. We're getting to the end of this crash course soon. There is also a contact section that we'll be building. So yet again a section, which will be with the class background gray 200, and it will have a p10, so as for padding 10, and it will have a div inside the whole section. This will wrap the contact form, so it will have the class container and mx auto to center it horizontally. There will be an h2 given. It will be with the class text 3x font bold text center and mb6, and it will say, this h2 will say contact us, and after that we can actually create the form, which won't have an action, but it will have a max width, so max w, and then lg will put you a max width. This is a predefined value, and then mx auto just to center it horizontally, and then inside that we'll be creating the actual form elements. So there will be a div that will wrap them around. This will be the mb4. Inside them, each of them is going to have a label. This label, this will be for the name. Its text will be, sorry, not like this, class. The class will be first of all block, then text gray 700, and block is needed because otherwise they wouldn't be under each other, they would be next to each other, because by default these are inline elements. And then mb2, just to give them a little bit of margin bottom, and let it say name. And as for the input element, it will be type text, it will be the id name, and as for its class is going to be really simple. It will be v full, which will say the width will be 100%. It will be p2, just for a little bit of padding. It will have a border, so if you hover over the border, what will it say? Border 1 pixel. If you say dash, you can also set some different border settings. You can set the color of the border by saying border gray 300, for example. It will be rounded, and whenever you focus on it, focus outline none. This outline none is basically needed because there's a ugly default behavior whenever you click into it. That's not what you want at any contact form whenever you're styling it. And there is also, when we focus, another attribute that I'd like to change will be the border blue 500, and it's underlining it with scribble lines. That's because I need to put it this way, so focus, and now it's all perfect because there is a space there. I copy over the two values. So here I just change the email and the type to be email, the ID to be email, but these are essentially the same values. And there is the text area, which is yet again the same, absolutely. It's just that the IDs and the labels are linked properly. Great, we're done with our contact form. And last but not the least, the footer. The footer is going to be very simple. We have the class bg blue 600. If we have a text white and p4, let's create a wrapper container inside it. So div, it will be with the class container, mx auto to center it, and text center to center the text as well. And then simply put in there a p tag. It won't have any styling. This and copy will say the copyright tag right there. So it's a very simple footer, and we're basically done. And now what I'll be showing you is how to tame your site so that it can have different color schemes and you can easily change it around. Now for customizing our theme, we'll be going on an unorthodox way because of how our Tailwind is set up, because we are using the Play CDN. How you would normally do it is by coming to the adding custom styles. You can see that here in the module.exports between your theme, you can customize your screens, your colors, font family, everything you want. And how you do it is come here to the module.exports, then theme, then extension, and in the colors section, you would just simply name your color, and in the quote signs, give it the actual hexadecimal value. it would be very simple. However, since we are not installing Node here, it won't work. If you install it with Node, go ahead, do this, it will work absolutely 100%, but it won't work if you did with the Play CDN. So what we'll be doing instead is, if you scroll down in the documentation, you can see that there is something in the main.css that you would put in here that says layer, components, and my custom style. So here you can actually create custom styles, and what we'll be doing here instead, create a new style. Its type will be text / Tailwind CSS, and then layer and utilities, and then in brackets, open it up, and here you would do, for example, something like this. I will copy this over from the prepared code. Background primary. So instead of saying background gray here, you would say background primary. And if I open up, this is a new HTML file that I opened up. You can see that it's working. Now this, you could argue that you would just create a normal file, a normal CSS file, but unfortunately with this type of installation, this is the only way you do it. If you were to go through the installation steps with Node, you would simply have to update your tailwind.config.js, which would be very simple, and Tailwind CSS would help you out with its own IntelliSense as well. But this is what we have in our arsenal for the CDN, so I'll just show you what the actual code looks like. Here we have a whole bunch of predefined classes. I've defined some for secondary dark and light. We are not using all of them, but the option is there, and if you, for example, want a toggle for a dark and light mode, you can do it and then change the classes with a little bit of JavaScript around. And here, as you can see, background primary is present here, it's present here as well, but it's background primary dark. So you get it. You basically defined classes here, and if you went the harder installation way, or at least if you have to be familiar with Node, then you simply put in the colors here, and then say BG and the name that you've given there. That's it for the theming, and that's it for our crash course. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found value in it, please consider giving us a like, maybe even subscribe. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next one. God bless.